Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Life Talks. Today, I have David Smiley and Frank Stevens, two people that I've had previously on the show. And I wanted to have both of them on because I think they see the world in two different ways. And I want this conversation to be an example of how we can see the world differently and still come together. So, without further ado, I just want to dive right into it. And we'll start off by kind of just having a brief introduction of each of you. Start with you, David, first. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, anything you want to share, and then I'll pass it off to Frank.
Sure. I grew up in New Jersey. I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Colorado at Boulder. After that, I lived in Vermont for a few years, and then I went to law school in New York City, which is close to where I live in New Jersey. I've been a criminal defense attorney in New York City for over a decade now, and that's pretty much it.
And Frank?
I'm Frank Stevens. I'm from Battle Mountain, Nevada. I've raised a family. I have 3 children. I have a grandbaby. I have an associate's degree in general studies. I'm a happy guy, generally. I'm kind of, that's like I told you guys earlier, I'm really tired. I might be a little salty today, depending on where this thing goes. But I'm down for anything. Let's listen to what you have to say, and I'll promise you I will. I'm not the type of person to just listen in an attempt to formulate my response. I will listen to you. I will take in what you say with careful consideration, and then give you my response.
Well said.
I appreciate that. I also should mention, since I've got all of the reggae art behind me, I also manage a Caribbean dancehall reggae artist, and I have like a side business putting out music.
Yeah, and I'm willing to put that into the right above the comment section below the video, because I'm happy to promote any music is something that brings us together. I'm sure Frank would agree with that. Music is something that is a universal language. So I guess that's a good place to start. We'll start on a happy note.
Well,
I think.
Let me also say that I have no. I'm not here to sell anything or to promote anything. I'm just here because you're a pretty good guy, Michael Becchioni, and also I intentionally don't give my background for a reason. So we'll go for that.
All right, so let's start out with this. Okay, so half the country believes the previous election was stolen, and half the country believes that it wasn't, and it was a fabrication. So, and let's start from there, and I'll start it off with David. What would you say to the half of the population of people who believe that the election was rigged?
It's a big question.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just trying to think. So, I mean, I think that this narrative of the election being rigged and stolen from Donald Trump has been being pushed for a while, along with, its general promotion or argument that you can't trust the media, that you can't trust our national institutions. And to that extent, if you're absorbing and believing those two arguments, where are you getting your information that the election was not rigged? You're getting it from the courts, you're getting it from the media. So if you don't trust those institutions, then I could certainly understand why you don't believe that the election was stolen, or why you do believe that narrative that the election was stolen. So, I studied philosophy in undergraduate, and there are some famous philosophers that called themselves the empiricists. And basically, they believe that you only knew for certain those things that you directly experienced. So there's always a layer in between reality and perception. And, you know, do I know for sure? No. I'm just comfortable believing that, you know, I believe in our institutions, and, you know, that's why I don't think that the election was stolen, pretty much.
All right, Frank, your response?
The election was absolutely stolen. I'm not afraid to say it. I think that we're being badgered into believing that into a false narrative by a president who does not have the consent of the governed. It's absolutely.
Actually, real
Sorry.
quick, let me add context to what Dave just said, because David made a good point. I think in and of itself, maybe you can branch off that. Is that he said that, you know, in philosophy, you know what you can see. So how to know for sure, because you're listening to one source, someone else may be listening to another source. So what would be that source of knowing for sure that would be elected?
Well, so it works like this, right? It works like this. If since you're an attorney, you understand that in many cases, maybe not, although not on a legal in a legal framework, many times lack of an admission or lack of a denial in many circumstances are an admission. And there is only one side of this entire argument that is attempting to fight for transparency. The other side is absolutely uninterested in engaging anyone in reference to investigations or having the FBI investigate absolute criminality on a state level. And it's really a Boss Tweed, Tammany Hall type argument in relation to the Democratic Party run amok in every sense of the word. And everybody knows. I mean, it's enjoyable to listen to anyone try to relate that the fourth estate should be trusted, that the news is trustworthy, or that there's an actual investigative reporting on any level whatsoever. James O'Keefe with Project Veritas, you know, he spoke with that guy you were talking about earlier, Eric Weinstein. And in doing, he said, there's no such thing as investigative reporting anymore. What we have is a bunch of criminals who are engaged in corporate dissemination of news articles with an intent to cover their ass. And so they don't report the news. So here's the thing. I'm kind of like you from the respect that I don't just automatically bind myself to ideas. I think Donald Trump fucked up in a lot of ways. He should have, for instance, he should have given pardon to Julian Assange. Julian Assange put out a report, an infographic to the world relating that the Council on Foreign Relations is in control of all media apparatus in the United States of America, that he controls the Trilateral Commission, and they control the Bilderberg Group, and all six media apparatus in the everything you hear, see, or listen to on the news is filtered through a bureaucratic entity that decides what is good and what is bad. It is absolutely, it's enjoyable, like I said, to listen to somebody say that we should trust the media, that there's no bias in media, or try to convey that the media itself.
So if not the media, then who would be the source to listen to?
Well, so there's all types of sources to listen to. So there's all these people, like, it's in your face. As I said this before in our last conversation, that it's in your face that there was all types of fraudulent activity taking place. I tried to preface or prepare for this conversation by posting a bunch of stuff on my Facebook page about how the election was stolen, and specifically how Project Veritas participated in all of these investigations in relation to Like the lady that they thought Texas was going to go the other way. And there was a woman that agreed to sell 7,000 votes. Just that one person agreed to sell 7,000 votes. And just 2 days ago, she was actually prosecuted for that. So she's going to prison for a long time, right? And that's just one data set. That's just one small point in the map. And there's all other kinds of things in Minnesota and Michigan and in Georgia. There was an attorney in Georgia. God, I wish I could remember his name. That actually stood up and said that there's absolute proof that these 5 women that were caught on camera removing those ballots and running them through on camera through the counter over and over and over and over. One stack of ballots, a large stack of ballots, through a counting machine numerous times. And the question is, where's the culpability for that? Who's doing the investigation? What are those people's names? Because those people are culpable for a crime. On its face, there's video evidence of them processing one stack of ballots over and over and over again, and new tables, and more than one table. And so that is in your face evidence that on a state level, there was nefarious activity taking place. And the Democrats say, nothing to see here. We don't want to investigate. Everybody align behind us or else.
I think I want to hear, because it's a lot. It's a
Sorry. I don't mean
no, not at all. It's more so the time.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to have specific segments, but I want to give each opportunity that it's uninterrupted. And but anyway, your response, Dave.
Okay. So there's a couple things that I wrote down that you pointed to as sources of information that you basically trust. First was okay. So first you said that you wanted an FBI investigation.
Sure.
So I guess my question to you is, why do you trust the FBI? And if they did investigate it and they gave an answer that you didn't like, would you just assume that it was a bullshit investigation? Like you are attacking the media as being like fake, and the point of view of Democrats as being fake, but you are explicitly accepting as true things that Eric Weinstein said, a report that was published by Julian Assange, a video that you saw that you did not record, that you have no idea if it was really filmed where it claims to be filmed. I mean, how do I know that that was actually not filmed in a film studio?
Because
I mean, you don't, huh?
Because the woman was prosecuted.
Okay. I thought you were talking about what about the video that you mentioned of the people running 6,000 ballots through the machine over and over again? I thought it was the woman who was sold 7,000 votes.
That was processed by the media, widespread by every news channel. It was on.
I'm just saying, like, you believe that video, right?
Well, it goes right back to what I said in the beginning. The absence of a denial is an admission. There's nobody saying that's not true. That's not true. There's nobody saying that. It's been established, and I understand the establishment is anecdotal, but it's superiorly anecdotal. It is. There are so many sources saying this is what happened, and this is the video.
But you're giving weight to all. You're giving weight to all of those sources because they feed into your narrative.
No, that's not true.
So why is it that you trust the Julian Assange? Why do you trust the Project Veritas? What's so reliable about that?
Live video about what happened. It's like you see the burglar going into a residence, it's all on video, and he pulls out a gun and the other guy shoots him. You trust what happened. The guy pulled the gun, and so he got shot, and that's the way it works. I mean, that's what.
So how do you know it's reliable video? There's always going to be a logical leap.
So the question couldn't the question be that mainstream and those sources may not be reliable, and you can only go by what you see. So I think that would be right. So
that's what you see.
but that's what I'm saying is that Dave, you had just said that how do you know it's not made on a set, right? So the question becomes, it could be made on a set on for let's say Project Veritas, but what's to say that it couldn't be the same with mainstream as well?
I agree with you, which is why I said, like, I don't, I'm basically claiming ignorance. Like,
Yeah.
he's the one who said the election was absolutely stolen. And my response was, I don't really know. I am basically putting my trust in establishment institutions. And you're basically using anti-establishment institutions and putting your trust in that. I don't really see a difference. There is
Of course
nothing
there's a
about
difference. There's a huge difference, and it's a leap in
what's the
logic.
difference.
What is,
What
because
is the difference? Tell
we,
me.
to say I don't know is, I think, a step in the
Right.
right direction.
Well,
To
I think it's a
David's
step
point.
in the wrong direction. The reason why it's a step in the wrong direction is because when there is, like George Orwell wrote that the what is it? The truth. Don't trust your lying eyes, right? Because even though it's right in your face and you can see what's happening, and it's nefarious. On its face, it's nefarious. It is what is that word? It is. I don't recall. I don't remember the word, but it's guilty on its face. You see what's happening, right? And beyond how, and you subject yourself. Every person listening subjects herself to reason, right? That's what I say in the very beginning of when you started to tell everybody that the media should be trusted, is that nobody trusts the media for a
Well, I
reason.
didn't say that other people should. He asked me like why
Right.
I'm comfortable with it, and I also did say that
Because you
there
do.
were arguments that were submitted to the courts and stuff like that. Now, I
Well,
know
all
you
the-
probably have some issues where they didn't address the merits of the case and they denied their claim based on lack of
Some
standing.
standing is like 95% of all cases. That's true.
Mhm. So, I understand that those probably aren't satisfying decisions to you because you want to see them address the merits of the claim as opposed to just saying you can't bring this action. So,
I don't want
uh,
I don't want to see them address the merits of the claim. I want the merits of the claim. Yeah, well, actually, that's not true. It's kind of accurate because there has to be an investigation. There absolutely has to be an investigation. And beyond actually performing an investigation and just saying, oh, we have no interest in this and nobody should have an interest in this. And if you have an interest of it, we're going to terrorize you by calling you a terrorist. The foundations of government are going to challenge who you are, and we're going to tell you what you're going to do, or you will unite behind me, or we will call you a terrorist. And we'll make it so you don't fly. We'll make it so you don't have a job. We'll make it so you can't be hired. That's not unity. That's totalitarianism. That's a disgusting level
so
of totalitarianism.
who's doing that?
Joe Biden is doing that. He's
How?
absolutely. What do you mean? How could you challenge it? It's so in your face.
Oh,
And I hate to say.
no, I think
But
that does you a disservice when you say it's so in your face because everyone is, as David said before, I'm trying my best because this is what I see on Facebook, Instagram all day, right? It's so obvious to your viewpoint in the same way to David's point. It's so obvious in his viewpoint what he believes. That's our whole problem, is that it's our inability to communicate ideas. And I would add also that Facebook and Instagram and these social media platforms aren't doing the same service as right now we can communicate our ideas. Video is a step in the right direction.
Like, let me say one thing.
Sure.
Okay. You already said you have a particular view of attorneys. So you probably know that they like money, right? So this is something I always found curious, is why are these, like when you're a law firm, okay, like your brand is prestige, okay? Like the reason that some law firms can charge astronomical hourly rates is because they sell prestige, they sell expertise. They have all of their attorneys graduating from Harvard, Yale, NYU. They're selling name brand, right? So if there was this massive fraud that you're talking about, what law firm would not want the prestige of pulling back the curtain and showing the American public that this election was stolen and they're going to prove it, because they would go down in history as like the greatest legal minds of our time. Like, if you were able to show the stuff that you believe in a court of law, which should be able to be done if it's based on
On a
fact
state level.
and there's law, if the facts and law are in your favor,
Mhm.
you're going to win in court. That's how it works. So there instead of having law firms lining up to take this argument to the highest levels, you have people denying this dude's business. You have Trump's business. Nobody wants to represent him except like a couple of these, you know, like a Rudy Giuliani and that other person. What's her name? Like Lynn something, Lynn Scott, Lynn Wood. I mean, it's not like you've got like everybody rushing to make this argument. Nobody wants to touch it because it's destroying it would destroy their prestige. It would destroy their brand.
Just admitting that they intend to align behind former President Trump would crush them. Not if imagine.
Not if the facts and the law were on their side. That is not the way lawyers think.
That's not true. That's not true.
Why?
Okay,
The criminal defense attorney who represented Michael Jackson, the guys who represented O.J. Simpson, everybody knew those guys were guilty, and they made a huge name for themselves defending that guy.
Right. Except in this one regard, attorneys are not stupid, and it takes investigation to come in furtherance of a crime to establish that crime occurred. And if a law firm or even a law enforcement officer attempted, or a private investigator attempted to do these things on his own, he would be shut down in every respect. They would be shut down in every respect. At every turn, the pillars of our government have a lot of reason to prevent investigation in this regard. And everyone knows, here's something I always say everyone knows, but it's absolutely true. Everyone knows that voting does not work. Everyone knows that voting does not work, and especially on a congressional level, because the gerrymandering of every district has allowed the corruption of Congress. All you need now is a D or an R by your name, and the Congress with 9% approval rating can have 96% reelection prospects. And so how is that possible? It's possible because it's all been prearranged, and there's no getting them out. It's when you can decide on your own which districts that you control, then you can manage. And it's both parties that are corrupted by it, because it's like they're on a tightrope, right? It's like the Democratic Party and the Republican Party have broken in your house, right? And they're punching each other and they're fighting each other really hard, but they're only fighting each other over who gets to steal your TV set, right? And there's no way to stop it, because the Republicans don't want it to go away, and the Democrats don't want it to go away, because when the Whig Party left, they immediately understood the necessity of having a two-party system, because if there's a two-party system, you can change all sorts of things about government. Only that side's responsible. Only this side's responsible. You can war the two parties against themselves and divide and conquer. And it's being done even today. And the whole issue with the Democratic Party, and the reason why I absolutely, have been railing against them for years and years and years, goes all the way back to Lincoln and in the Civil War, and the fact that the Democrats were the party of slavery. And I just don't see in my heart how anyone could align themselves with the party of slavery. And I also don't, and we're going down another road, and I'm starting to digress, but the Republican Party was Abraham Lincoln was the first president of the Republican Party. And so,
yeah, I mean, I don't think you're going to have many Democrats say that they're pro-slavery, and I don't think you're going to have many Republicans I don't think the modern day Republican Party is necessarily representative of the same things that Lincoln stood for. Right. So I would think it's fair to say that both parties have morphed over the years since the 1800s. And, but I don't know, I just kind of want to go back to the main thing that we were talking about, unless you want to move on. But
No.
I mean, there's kind of like you're okay now that we've kind of got the juices flowing a little
Yeah.
bit and my brain is kind of churning. Like, I think I have a better answer to your question of why I don't think the election was rigged. You know, and it does have to do with some of the things we were talking about. And like, so I feel like you're ascribing way too much power to the Democrats in saying that, you know, an attorney or a law firm who took Trump's case would just be buried. I just don't accept that. And that might be a spot where we agree to disagree. But like, I don't think the Democrats are that powerful. In fact, I think the Republicans are way better at politics than the Democrats.
No, absolutely.
Wait,
Well,
why? So why do you think? Why are the Republicans better than Democrats in that
like
regard?
they always have consistent messaging. They definitely seem to be more tactical. And they have up until this last election where they lost the Senate and the House. Well, they didn't really lose the Senate. It's a 50-50, but the vice president would be the tie-breaking vote. But basically, I mean, the Republicans, I feel like there have been so many instances during, especially like Trump's presidency, where there was like a controversy that would have sunk most people. But like, they just have this way of overcoming scandal that is so impressive to me. Like, this guy gets, I mean, I don't want to go into the nitty gritty of, say, like his phone call to the Ukraine, right? But like, you know, the accusation was that he was making a quid pro quo, right? Where he was like, I'm not going to give you the money until you give me the dirt on Biden, basically. And like, you know, he kind of like said that, right? And instead of saying like, I didn't say it or it's not true, like they'll just like put it out there and be like, it's fine. It was a perfect conversation. It was beautiful. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. This happens all the time. And it's like, it's unbelievable that they can persuade like that many people that that is the way things work. I just think they're so good at it. I think Mitch McConnell is like a master tactician. Okay. He like totally, his main thing was like, I want as many conservative justices on the federal court. And as soon as he had the president in place to nominate them, I mean, that shit was like streamlined, dude. He even got a Supreme Court justice in like 10 days before the election. I mean, he is just so good. So I just feel that, you know, it's like, it's almost like, you know, I'm a Jets fan. Okay. So like, I always assume the Jets suck and the Jets are going to lose when they go into a football game. So it's like, maybe because I'm a Democrat, I also like have that thing where like, it's my team. So like, you always feel like you always doubt your own team. But yeah, I mean, I feel like the Republicans, you know, like if there was stuff that, like, for instance, like everybody always talks about this like brown suit scandal that Obama had. I don't know if you ever saw their tan suit. Like he came out of Air Force One wearing a tan suit, and he was getting like railed on Fox News for you know, oh, it's unpresidential. Oh, that tan suit. What is he doing in that? You know, I mean, that was like one of the bigger scandals in his presidency. And like, I have absolute faith that the Republicans would find the dirt on Joe Biden and put it out there and ruin the guy. Like, I don't accept that. Like, I just feel that they are much better at, like, they're ruthless and they are good at what they do. So it almost that you made this thing before where you're talking about like a lack of a, you know, like an omission is kind of, or a lack of, you know, it's like, it is kind of like the fact that they haven't come up with something that's stuck is almost some evidence that there is nothing to stick. And so that's part of it. And then just kind of like, I know that you are citing these sources like that you give a lot of credence to this report that Julian Assange put out. You said you saw videos that you believe are real, but like, I feel like if you saw the same video on a CNN platform, you might be more suspicious of it just because of who's putting it out there.
It was on
Okay.
CNN.
Okay. All right. So I didn't see the video. Okay. So I
Well,
guess like
Okay.
there's some faith involved, but yeah, I think the fact that no lawyers took his case, none of these prestigious law firms took his case and wanted to be associated with these legal claims because, in my opinion, they were meant to undermine our democracy, and no lawyer wants to be a part of eroding the people's confidence in our institutions.
That's not true. That's
All
not
right.
true.
Well, okay. Tell me why that's wrong.
All right. So the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini described the word fascism. And he described that word as a merger of state and corporate power. And then Merriam-Webster's dictionary came along, a corporation, and totally changed the name or the definition of fascism to align itself with a nationalistic mindset with extreme totalitarianism traits. It's not, you can look it up online. Benito Mussolini, the inventor of fascism, described fascism as a merger of state and corporate power. Now, it's in your face that Facebook and Twitter and numerous corporations, even Citibank, are involved in doing the will of the corporation and the government as one. So, and it just so happens that the chosen people in this regard are the Democrats. And it has a lot to do with who they paid and, who accepted their funding. And
Can I just ask you one question on that? Like, do you not think that George W. Bush was part of that boys' club?
sure, absolutely.
But he was a Republican, so
Absolutely.
it's not just the Democrats.
Well, I think that's an
Right.
important thing, though, that there are rhinos, right? I think the focus has to be that we need to stop thinking collectively as Democrat versus Republican, and that there's corrupt versus non-corrupt, and and to some extent we deserve the politicians that we get. And I mean, not to go too off topic here, but it's hard to really. This two-sided politics has got to go. Either you're a corrupt politician or you're not corrupt. And I would,
Well, so either Project Veritas lies with every single video they put out, and even though either they are, like Eric Weinstein said, the only investigative reporters left in the United States, or they're not, right? So so what you have is the NPR submitting news reports to the other news outlets, and every one of them parroting from a teleprompter what it says. And there's evidence of this. There's anecdotal evidence and superior anecdotal evidence of numerous news outlets parroting the exact same line about the exact same subject, and as if they were all reading the same words off the teleprompter. It's absolutely true. You can look it up. And so either you're going to, in every one of these instances where Project Veritas goes to it busts this woman in Texas who was illegally ballot harvesting 7,000 ballots and offered to sell them for $5,000, and who was later prosecuted in a court of law. Either you give yourself over to believe that that's all a lie and that Project Veritas doesn't do investigative reporting and they're only out there to help Trump, or you give yourself over to reason and understand that really happened. That woman really got prosecuted. And you give yourself over to reason just on its face. Everyone knows, and I say that a lot. A lot of people, it's evidenced by statistical information, and it's evidenced by, when people are asked, "Do you trust the media?" And everyone says no. They have a tiny acceptance. Like, can you imagine? Like, I remember when who was the congressman, Matt Gaetz. He sat in the House of Representatives during the first impeachment trial of Trump, and he said this. He said, Muammar Gaddafi had 11% approval rating, and his own people drug him into the street and assassinated him. And then he said, we have a 9% approval rating. And so it was, and then all this, and a lot of other things happened between that time and what happened on the Capitol. But what you need to understand is, it's not abhorrent for people to be upset.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something else I'd like to talk about, the Capitol.
Hey,
Right.
can I?
We are the government.
I didn't
Let me
want
say this real quick. We are
Okay.
the government, not them. They represent us. They do not rule us. And even though they've given themselves the power to unlimited taxation, I am not a 70% slave, and I'm not a 50% slave. And the original Tea Party was started as the party that taxed enough already. Okay. And I understand there's a lot of people that need help. But I'll go on to that later. Go ahead. I don't want to take up all the airtime.
I actually wanted to ask you if you could pause it so I could run to the bathroom.
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
I'll pause it right now. Cool.
Thanks.
All right, gonna start it back up. Not sure where
Thank you.
exactly we left off on. I think David, your chance to respond, right, to what he was saying, Frank, just to touch what you were.
Yeah, definitely could use it. I mean, we are kind of going all over the place.
Yeah, well, I
I
think what was brought up before was the attack on the Capitol. I wanted to share my views and maybe get a little conversation in this. I know I'm kind of more listening and trying to dive into each of your thoughts, keep it balanced. But I wanted to share how I see it as far as the Capitol. Now, there's so many layers, and I think that for example, Frank, when you say it's so obvious. It's funny. My girlfriend has called out recently in this past year because I've been saying the exact same thing. And that's why I've been calling you out on it, because I've been saying, like, isn't it obvious? Right. And it's like, yeah, of course, if everyone saw the world the way I did, then it would be pretty obvious. But the truth is it's actually an arrogance of myself to say that. I think isn't it obvious how stupid I am? That's actually, or how ignorant someone can be, I think would be a better thing to say, at least in my experience. But as far as the Capitol thing goes, a lot of emotion in it, right? And listen, I think you were talking about, Frank, about violence, and you've brought it up before in the previous video that we've done. Now,
very important.
I personally think politicians throughout history have not really cared about the people. When you get in position of power, you really don't care. Democrat, Republican. So politicians have not been. Oh, all right. So good. Let me finish my point. But now, when these people storm the Capitol, do I think that they should have stormed the Capitol? No. But at the same time, I also believe that what happens when you have a lot of frustrated Americans? How do they express themselves if these politicians do not listen? Now, I'm not saying to do that, but what I'm saying is to I like the idea of thinking deeper. Our country is founded on people who murdered people on Christmas Eve. So that to me is like, violence isn't necessarily, to me, a bad thing, right? The question is, what do people believe? People will go to war based on a belief. So does that make what constitutes good violence versus bad violence? Because we have the idea, I support troops, but I also don't support unjust wars. So, but who's to say what is just and what isn't? And I think it's really an information problem that we receive. Right. If I turn on the TV and they say, oh, well, this guy is bad, and everyone just repeats it, versus doing their own research, which I would argue a lot of people, they're stuck in their 9 to 5 and they don't even do the research for time and whatever, fill in the blank. But war is always based off a racket. And I think in the same thing. So when this thing at the Capitol happened, I also think there's bad actors on both sides, and I think that would be a good place to go. We had talked about this last time, Dave, and I think this would be a healthy debate as well. Is that there seems to be on the one side Black Lives Matter versus the MAGA debate, like these people who stormed the Capitol, and the other one. And maybe we can go into the Capitol thing a little bit, and also the riots that had happened, because I think there would be some discussion and disagreement here that we could tackle, and maybe find some universal ideas in that. So maybe
I think he left off, so maybe I'll start up.
Okay, sounds good.
But there were some things that he said. I guess I feel like I'm being put as the defender of the mainstream media. So I just want to be clear that like I see the propaganda, okay? And I would think I was telling Mike on our last conversation that I think that one of the most important skills that or somebody can have in our country right now is to be able to parse out the opinion from the facts that are being reported, and being able to observe that like these are essentially propaganda talking points, and being able to separate that out from what is from what happened, what's opinion, and just being able to understand like, yeah, I'm watching CNN, and it's there's like, it seems like as the night progresses, the ratio between facts and opinion, it becomes way more opinion as the night progresses. And I think Fox has the same format where like it goes from like Tucker to Hannity, and on CNN it ends with Don Lemon, who I think is like by far one of is almost all opinion. So like I will say that even though I watch this stuff and consume it, as I'm sure you watch it too, I don't think it's the gospel. Okay. So I just wanted to make that clear. I'm talking to you and I see how passionate you are about the fact that this election was stolen. And one of the things I was talking about, Mike, is I don't like the comparison between people who are protesting for their unfair and unequal treatment in the history of this country and currently with people who don't have a legitimate gripe, which is people who are saying that the election was stolen. I do see that you have a lot of passion about that topic. So,
but it's not just that, right?
What do you mean?
I mean, first of all, the people that are protesting about their believed grievances against the government. So they believe that a group of people that are minorities within the United States believe that they are somehow suppressed or subjugated, and that it's absolutely false. That's the minorities in the United States live far better lives than minorities in every other section of the world. And to try to say anything other than that is absolutely false. It has way more to do. First of all,
hold on. You just made a false equivalency there. Okay, you're basically saying like minorities at a category are people who are oppressed. So you're saying that like the oppressed minorities in this country live better than oppressed minorities in other countries, right? Isn't that what you basically just said?
Well, you have to see.
I mean, that's not really like a great answer if you're the oppressed minority.
It's not.
And you're the least oppressed minority.
Right. Well, here's the
thing.
You have to listen to my overall answer, because it really comes down to the crux of the issue.
Okay, but that particular point that you just made about minorities in the U.S. having a better life than minorities in other countries is
I think it's false equivalency.
I mean, look, it's like, if you're saying that they're less oppressed than other minorities, and it could be worse for them, yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, they could be in a country where there's like a genocide against
wait. But are they burning buildings down in other countries? Are those people that are subject to this?
Well, there's wars in other countries.
Well, that's true.
I mean, like what's going on in Syria? Like the minority in Syria is like shit's going down. It's not like in America. No, it's not.
Okay,
but
so
don't start it off with the premise of like they don't have it as bad as other minorities, because actually by making that statement, you're conceding the point that they have it bad, right?
No.
No.
But you
So
didn't. I didn't get to my last part of my,
Well, finish
my
your
point.
finish your
So,
point, and then Dave.
all right. So the last part of my
Okay.
point is it has nothing to do with race. And
Okay.
even though the Democratic Party struggles to make it all about race, it's about economics, and it's about socioeconomics, and it's about the fact that large portions of the populace who happen to be through the years were actually oppressed. That when there were, we're talking about a country that has gone through everything from hell to high water in reference to um, holding down a certain portion of the populace. And it had a lot to do with Democrats, by the way. But um, it's about economics. It's about the rich versus the poor. It's not about black versus white. And it's evidenced by the George Floyd, what happened during the George Floyd case. When all those people poured into the street, there were millions of people everywhere. They weren't just black or Hispanic. They were white. Largest people are no longer racist. Well, I shouldn't say that. There are. I should um, gauge my remarks. Here's the thing: there are racists in the United States, but for the largest part of people, I raise my children to hold people accountable for what they do, not because some stupid fucking thing about your skin pigment. That's the dumbest thing in the world. Your skin pigment means nothing. It doesn't make you smart. It doesn't make you a good neighbor. It doesn't say how you're going to vote or what you're going to do in life. It means nothing. Only an idiot would have you believe that your skin pigment means something. And you know who says that? Martin Luther King. So Martin Luther King was he was a hero to all because he spoke the truth, right?
But he wasn't a hero at the time. So
no, but here's
that.
the thing. But he is now, right? And so, what I'm trying to say is, a belief that cops are bad in any respect whatsoever is false. And it really plays. And I'm glad I get to debate a defense attorney, a public defender, no less. And the reason why I say that is, I hope. Did you say that? I'm sorry if I.
Sorry.
Anyhow,
don't worry about it, man.
Yeah. Here's the thing. The reason why I like it is because in a lot of ways you're affected by it. You see it. It's in your face, right? And I understand that there's technicalities to the law and that there's ways of skirting the law that has to do with, exclusionary evidence and how someone isn't prosecuted because, look at this. The attorneys typically spend their days rifling through reports in order to pick out one little section of the big bad cop. Look what he did. He didn't read you Miranda incident to arrest. That makes all this fruit of the poison of the tree. All that evidence he obtained after that is no longer admissible in court. I mean, it needs to be gauged in a different way. And what you really need to understand is that one cop is not another cop. From the respect that
I agree with that. As far as
listen to me now.
identity politics.
Don't break my chain of thought.
Sure.
I'm gonna lose it. One cop is not another cop, in the respect that the guys that came back from Fallujah are not like the guys that came back from Kuwait, right? And when you see violence, when you are in violence, when you grab your gun when someone walks up to your car because you don't know if they're going to fucking kill you, it changes you, right? And you even a new copper, right? That's never been involved in violence, never had to fight, or had someone actively fighting them. They don't know. It changes who you are. It changes your absolute disposition and in the way you walk and talk and carry yourself. When you have to take someone into custody by force, when that fucking guy, what was his name that had the knife in
Jacob Blake.
Yeah, David Blake. Jacob Blake, I'm sorry, admittedly had a knife, had a felony warrant for his arrest, was tasered numerous times, carrying the knife to the car. And as he went into the car, remember, here's a guy that must be arrested. He has a felony warrant for his arrest. Armed, being told to stop, taking a car that did not belong to him. he was shot for a reason. And it's a good thing that he didn't die, right? But at least he's paralyzed. And here's what I mean by that. He's accused of sexually assaulting a young lady, right? And I am 100% behind the victims. And I don't care about any type of, I'm sorry, my puppy. So what is the syndrome? It's, gosh, I wish I knew. What's the syndrome where you start siding with the person who captured you?
Oh, I'll do the research. Oh,
well, so God, it's right on the tip of my tongue. The
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, so Stockholm syndrome has, in some ways, in my mind, has a lot of a defense attorney siding with people that they know that they would never spend any time with, they would never socialize with, and especially in big cities. You're talking about, there's places that cops won't go in LA, that they do not patrol, right? And that people get, it's abhorrent that the New York PD is doing pat downs, a stop and frisk, or that the cops in Chicago are patting down people because of the colors they wear, right? These gang officers are ensuring that they're going to live through the night by taking extreme precautions in a Fallujah type environment where people are fucking killing people right and left. And I'm not saying it's Fallujah or it's Pakistan, or I'm just saying that when just picture yourself as an officer in a large city who has a person that runs up to his car, an unidentified person that's running up to the car, who puts his hand on his gun, not knowing what to expect. That affects your psychology. That affects that when you start defending yourself to the extent that you are prepared to do battle with every person approaching you, there's an issue. And people don't go to Fallujah for fucking 20 years, right? And you're in downtown Baltimore, and you're in Chicago, the slum in Chicago, or where you can't even go from one neighborhood to another without being killed by the person from that neighborhood. Cops get accused in Chicago of dropping somebody off in the wrong neighborhood on purpose, right? And risking their life. And so we don't see that. People think one cop's just the same as every other cop, right? And we don't give them any credit whatsoever. When you put on those cops are putting on their vests and their gun belts for a reason, right? And it's not because they're not going to ever use them, right? And then, so all this stuff on George Floyd, it's good that the video all came out the way it did, because now we know those cops went out of their way to try to get that guy to sit in the back of that truck or that car, telling him there was air conditioning, just sit down. And then he pulled on his own, jumped into the seat, and then they laid down in the seat.
Are you talking about George Floyd or Jacob Blake?
No, now I don't mean to jump around. Now we're talking about George Floyd. And so George Floyd actually died of an overdose. And he had, when you slow the video down, he had a tab on his tongue. So he actually died of a fentanyl overdose. And the real video shows it all. And so you can't go back on all the rioting that you did. You can't say, oh, we destroyed all of Minnesota, so sorry. So when people eat a false narrative, because they have it in their mind.
I want to wrap up your point. Just add that.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, not at all.
I don't mean to elucidate.
No, it's also my responsibility to try to structure this somewhat. So, but I think the main point I wanted to stay on was the riots versus the Capitol, right, because that seems to be, to me, the mainstream division. Right. Magistan versus Wokistan. And and I think you made a really good point, Frank, there, and I think Dave would agree. Is that there's this identity politics, right? All cops are not bad. I don't believe that. In the same way, I don't believe all Republicans are bad.
The largest
half the country, just because, and listen, just because, and even let's say, just for the sake of argument, the election wasn't stolen. Just play with this idea. If you have half the population who believes it is, It doesn't mean that you just dismiss someone because they disagree with you. We
That's
should
right.
have the discussion. You don't just dismiss them, right? So, identity politics, I think, is a cancer. I don't like labeling a whole group of people. There are people, there are criminals who, there's people who are innocent who end up being labeled criminals, and there's criminals who are criminals, and we need to be able to not just group a whole bunch of people. I voted for Trump. I don't think that I'm unreasonable in this sense that, well, I voted for a person, so now I'm a terrorist. And I wouldn't say the same thing. Are you comfortable sharing with who you voted for, David, or do you not want to get into it?
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, I voted for Biden. Yeah.
Okay. So you voted for Biden. I wouldn't say, David, oh, you're an idiot because you voted for Biden. You should be dismissed. All your thoughts should be dismissed. I think that is a cancer that we have
How are you feeling about it now, David?
I'm just glad that Trump's not in office. I'm not like a huge Biden fan. I just thought I still believe that Trump is very dangerous to this country. So
why?
Man, it's like I could tell how you were talking.
Well, can we stay on? Well, let's stay on the Capitol and that first.
Right,
let's
right.
come back to that. I'll write that down.
Give me my thoughts on the Capitol.
Okay.
So here's the thing.
All right.
Well,
hold on, man. I feel like you just went off.
Yeah, I'd like to let Dave respond to something. Like, just make it really quick, just to wrap up your point, because I think you really did make your point as far as the Capitals. Well, just 1 minute, and then let's have Dave respond, because you have had a handful to talk there. Capitol versus the riots.
Is it Dave? I think he wants you to talk.
Oh, me? I thought he wanted you to.
Well, yeah, just wrap up your point real quick. The Capitol violence versus the riots that were before that. How they're related, how they're, the division between both. Your thoughts on them. Frank, you, and then we'll pass it over to David.
You want me to talk?
Yeah, just real quick, because you did have the floor, but
just tie everything up that you were just saying,
yes.
and put
between the two types of violences.
Put a bun on it. All right. So here's the thing. Thomas Jefferson said that when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. That's what's happening now. And when the government fears the people, there is liberty. The government is answerable to us. And they must understand that they are answerable to us and not try to just totally dismiss the concerns of what you said, 70 million voters, right? So what you do is you do a complete investigation. When you have that level of animosity, I would be 100% behind any type of paneling, any type of 9/11 commission. Something needs, you can't just totally say it's all fake, even though you know that, Elon Omar was sending out people to ballot harvest, and it's absolutely provable. And it's in your face. But so what you had is all these people that showed up at the Capitol, and in Trump, and what you had, first of all, what you had is a pre-planned event at the Capitol that was aware, that the Capitol Police was aware of, that Nancy Pelosi's, who is he? He is her officer, her man at arms. So the man at arms for the House of Representatives addressed Nancy Pelosi in relation to the fact that there's a planned attack on the Capitol. The FBI knew 2 days in advance, and no one told the President of the United States or the Secret Service. You see the nuts and bolts here. So, because if they would have, he wouldn't have been on the ground. If you tell the Secret Service that there's a planned attack on the Capitol, they are not going to allow the President of the United States to speak in public. And then what you have is that the assault on the Capitol occurred way before Trump ever began speaking. It was like half an hour before Trump ever started speaking, right? The knockdown of all those guards, there's rails outside of the fighting with the Capitol Police. Trump was unaware of that taking place, and that he was still giving his speech. And what you have is the First Amendment of the Constitution is far more than just the right to freedom, press, and religion. You have the right to peacefully assemble and address the government for redress. And that's labeled in the First Amendment of the Constitution. And so what you have is a president who then told his constituency, now we're going to I want you to march down there and peacefully protest after the event was already initiated. And so Trump is not liable for anything whatsoever. First of all, he's no longer president. So this charade that he's being somehow they're attempting to put him through another impeachment is absolute total farce that's going to fall flat on its face. And it's an absolute division tactic. And it is specifically designed for what I said earlier, to make people seem like they're terrorists.
All right, I think let's end it. Dave, you have the floor.
Okay.
For good chunk of time.
Sorry.
No, I need to moderate. So.
It gives you food for
yeah.
Go for it.
There's a lot of points
man.
there, so just.
It's just like, it's really scary to me that there's so many, like, I feel like you and I just have like almost zero baseline facts in common to have a discussion about this, because like there's a lot. Well, I mean, there was so many things that you said that I disagreed with, from your analysis of the Jacob Blake and the George Floyd encounters to say,
well, let him talk. Let David talk, and then we'll go back in the back to back. So thinking that Trump had absolutely nothing to do with the assault on the Capitol.
Zero.
It scares me, because I feel like there's stuff that you're saying with such confidence, like that the storming of the Capitol took place while Trump was still giving his speech, which I definitely
inside, but they broke down the outside barricade and were actively fighting the police. They were fighting the DC police that were behind the barricade before Trump ever said. He was unaware of what was taking place. But go ahead. I don't mean to.
Well, no, I mean, I just never seen anything to suggest that.
What specifically did Trump say that you believe incited violence, or is it by association? And if so, if it's by association, what should a president be and not be able to say, or what should he have done differently if he believes that it's a lie, regardless of whether it was or not? So,
see, it's gonna back up to like some just fundamental disagreements we have about, to me, he knows he lost. He's espousing lies to rile people up and say that, the election was stolen from him. And he made a power play to try and disrupt the casting of the electoral votes, and basically show everybody in Congress that I have these people that will fight for me. And it was a power play. Mm-hmm. And I do think he needs to be held accountable, because otherwise it sets a precedent that, in your last days of office, you can basically incite an insurrection against this country and get away with it because you're about to walk out the door. So I think that there's tremendous importance to the impeachment proceeding. We can't let that go unpunished. And
here's the crazy part to me,
just
anything
that, worthy of punishment.
Here's the thing.
Here's just asking you. See, what did he say specifically that you think incited the violence?
I have not watched the entire speech, but the snippets I've seen, we're going to march on the Capitol. We're going to fight. We're going to stop the steal.
I can bring it up while you guys are talking. The specific what he had said, and then we can dive into it, because I think it's important. But
these people were whipped into a frenzy. I mean, I am just finished watching a documentary about like the QAnon conspiracy. Mm-hmm. And, I think that Trump is definitely.
Okay, hey, can we take one small break? I think my little dog is about to poop in the house. I have to let her out. Okay, I'll be right back.
I'll pause it there. All right, start it back up. I want to go to shift it a little bit, because listen, either the election was stolen. Let's go into where we agree. Either the election was stolen or it wasn't. And the amount of cover up is absolutely insane if it was stolen. And on the other hand, it's like I see both narratives, and it's like I do. Well, but I can see it, like you just said. Can you just say what you said? Because I paused it for a second. Frank had to the damn dog's pooping in the house. Not allowed.
Sorry.
No, no.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
you
I
said
got
something-
a couple things I want to say.
Yeah.
I got a couple things I want to say. All right. Like first, you and I have different building blocks. And that's why my building blocks take me to this belief. Your building blocks of things you accept as true take you to this belief. So, I don't know. We would have to basically examine each block and have a conversation about those blocks before we can talk about these loftier ideas. Like, so it's like you believe, you know, the George Floyd thing is fucked up. Like, you think Floyd is an asshole or whatever. I'm not putting those words in your mouth, but like, you think that that's not a legit gripe. You don't think Blake is a legit gripe, and therefore you don't think Black Lives Matter is. Huh?
He's another criminal. They're both criminals. Go ahead.
Okay, fine. Okay. See, like, so that block right there that gets you to that, like,
Which
I
is
don't
true.
accept.
They're not criminals?
Look, I know they have both had criminal records, but I don't really think it matters. Okay, like,
Well, it doesn't matter if you commit a crime or you're involved in committing a crime.
Well, when you're going to be murdered, like, that's not the punishment.
Murdered? You got shot because you had a knife. It's not murder.
Okay, right. So, all right. So he needed to be shot 7 times.
He needs to be shot until he's no longer moving.
Well, I don't really think he gave him a chance to stop moving. Bang, 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 bang. When was he supposed to stop moving? In between bang number 1, bang number 4, which came about 3 seconds apart.
Right.
He didn't need to be shot 7 times. He definitely didn't.
But that's only because you've never been confronted with someone trying to kill you or have the chance to kill you.
But you see, the thing is I see videos. You even, like, how come none of these Capitol Police unloaded firearms on these dudes that stormed the Capitol? They were not scared.
That's a good question.
They were not scared for their life.
That's
so
right.
How come Jacob Blake, who's walking away and has no, he's so scary that he needs to be shot 7 times, but these people who are invading a fucking building don't get shot?
But no,
Okay,
why is that not scary?
If any of those people had had a knife, they would have been put down on the spot. And if any of those people were acting erratically, well, I guess they all were acting erratically, but if any of them were armed, what you have is this hyperbole that somehow the insurrection at the Capitol, it's insurrection. It's a bunch of armed, pissed off people that have been locked down for a year and or have actual grievance to address to the government of the United States with a 9% approval rating. And what are we supposed to wait until it gets to 0 before we bring our problems to the Capitol? What should we do? If the government absolutely does become tyrannical, and it sure seems like it's going to go that way, what do? Do we just say, okay, well, we'll do what you want because you were voted in, even though there's all types of evidence relating, look, it's in your face that every single one of these battleground states stopped the vote. Every one of them stopped the vote in the middle of the night.
I don't accept.
Right?
I'm just going to stop you right there.
Okay,
that's a block that you have. That's a block
that
you have that gets you to this.
Right.
Okay. All right. So, like, we don't agree on that. So I understand why you believing that gets you to here.
Well, I think because what Dave
Jader did not stop the vote in the middle of the night.
Let me ask you a question. Okay. Go ahead. One of the big conspiracies about this election being stolen
laws on
is look, the election laws were changed way before Trump lost.
2 weeks.
All these challenges could have been. That's not true. Okay. Leading up to the vote, these laws were passed a lot of times by Republican legislatures. So, look.
The legislatures absolutely say that it shouldn't be that way.
Okay. Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
All right. Okay. I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, but I'm assuming you probably believe that Dominion voting machines changed votes from Joe Biden from Trump to Joe Biden. I'm sure you believe that there was some corruption involved with Dominion. You believe that, right?
Only because there's absolute evidence that it occurred.
Okay.
Wait. It either did
Wait,
or
no,
it
no,
did
no.
not occur.
I'm just
in one of the
asking if you
counties in
believe
Michigan.
that.
Okay.
I'm just asking if you believe that.
Well,
Okay.
let me
All
ask
right.
you.
So you
Let me
believe
ask
that,
you.
right? You
Do
think
you believe that?
Dominion?
Do you
No,
believe
I
that?
don't.
Even
No,
I think a better question.
because you know what?
Possible. Is it possible?
happened.
Okay, so tell me this. Why did every major news network retract all of their negative statements about Dominion when they got threatened with lawsuits?
For the
If
same
it's true,
reason
do
they
you
tried to
know
pretend
that a defense against libel is the truth?
Right. Oh yeah.
So,
Okay.
so if you
Okay.
are suing somebody for telling
Right.
lies about you,
Right.
you win that lawsuit by saying, actually, what I said was the truth. So
Right.
you can't sue me for anything. So every major news network,
Right.
like Fox's news coverage, the people who
Mhm.
represent the network, they made Lou
Mm-hmm.
Dobbs go on Fox and say, okay, everything I said about Dominion isn't true. I'm retracting all that. OAN had to do it. Why?
Why?
Because it was
Because
gonna hit him
Dominion
in the
threatened them with a
pocketbook.
lawsuit.
Yeah, except
Look at
and they
that.
would have lost that lawsuit.
Oh,
That's the
okay.
important thing.
But that's not. Here's the thing. That is absolutely a false statement you just made. They listen. What you mean?
False statement. That
That's not true.
that truth is a defense to
That's
libel.
not true. Government entities
it
are.
is.
Listen to me now. Government entities are sued all the time, and they give large amounts of money to avoid lawsuits on their face. It is absolutely true that it occurs. It is a catch-22 between how much is it going to take to cost to take this matter to court, and do we have enough money to do that? And if the answer is going to be no, we don't. Sometimes it's better just to pay off. So for the same reason, in your respect as a defense attorney, sometimes it's better for the person to plead guilty because it's a light.
So let me just extrapolate your point then. Your point is that Fox's attorney said, look, it's going to cost us more money to defend against the Dominion lawsuit with the defense of truth than it will be if we just basically surrender our integrity and just say that we were lying.
Well, so here's
or say that it wasn't true. So they made a decision as a news network that they were going to surrender their integrity when the whole thing about being news is reporting the truth, right?
But they're not news.
So, okay. So
Fox
OAN, Fox, Lou Dobbs, all these people. Okay.
Propaganda. But here's the thing. So it's about hearts and minds, right? And so there's an absolute truthful statement that I'm about to make is that there's something called Project Mockingbird, and where the CIA infiltrated every news outlet in the country. And so the intelligence community typically runs everything that's released by the media. And so it's about hearts and minds. And what you do is you have a percentage of the populace that is resistant to your particular way of shaping the world, so the ideas now are to bring on globalism. And so what you have is.
Wait, could you just address my one point about why Fox retracted that statement?
What do you mean?
Because my position
Fox
is
no longer,
that they could have. My position is that every news outlet that retracted that statement did it because they could not prove a defense to libel, and they would have had to pay a lot of money.
That's not true.
Settlement.
Here's the thing.
Okay, so how do you know that?
Well, here's the thing.
I mean, to me, it's like
I kind of agree with you, but you have to hear me out. They retracted the statement because they didn't want to be involved in the lawsuit, and it's a calculus that is made about money, and so. But hear me out now. That if Fox News desired the result that occurred, why would they try to defend statements made against that result? And so what you have is what I was just trying to say is that it's about hearts and minds. It's about you can give out the information to the willing now on CNN and in MSNBC and the major news networks, and then you can give out a adapted view of that construct to people that are resistant to that message, that value liberty and don't want socialism and don't want to see a communistic society come on to, because the USSR was the United Soviet Socialist Republic. Communism is an idea, socialism is the practice. And so you have what's going on in the United States is an absolute restructuring of our political and they're basically trying to get rid of the idea that capitalism should rule the United States. It's an attack. It's an affront on capitalism.
Okay, can we slow it down here because you're making additional points. Well, basically, with response to my point about Dominion,
Right.
you think that there was that rather than that. Okay, first of all, you think that you had. I guess you're basically saying that there were some rogue anchors on Fox News because it's in the network's interest to not report on the Dominion stuff, but that like a couple of these people were talking about it, but
Right.
you know they and that the attorneys who represent that network made a decision that it would be more expensive to prove the truth
Right.
of what Dominion did.
They had no desire to prove the truth, is my position.
Right. They had no desire to prove the truth. So the people who were making those statements were acting rogue then.
They
right?
were giving leniency in relation to their programming and allowed to do what we're doing here and to give statements that are of their own volition, that they were allowed to express themselves the way they see fit. And then the corporation stepped in and said, "We're a corporation, unfuck yourself." That's what occurred.
Okay. So I mean, look, I guess that that's a fair analysis. It's like it just does. You don't seem to think that if you were like the news network that uncovered this massive fraud, or the attorney who uncovered this massive fraud, that there's no value in that. That there's too much working against you to make you even undertake that endeavor.
And there is a value in that.
How is there no value in being the only news network that is reporting the truth about Dominion?
Because lawsuits are expensive, and for the same region
but wouldn't you win in the long run if you broke that story? Wouldn't you win in the long run if you broke?
I am the only investigative news in the nation, because these news outlets that you pretend are giving you the news are giving you some regurgitated information from the NPR.
I do think Frank made a good point with the Mockingbird. Not to cut you off, I just wanted to add some context with the Mockingbird. That was something fairly new to me, as far as people being planted in Hollywood and in news agencies to manipulate public opinion. And this past years for me is and I was saying to Frank before when you stepped away.
I just want to say one thing when you're done.
Sure. But when you stepped away before Dave run to the bathroom, it seems like there's the two sides of the narrative of the mainstream media. It's complete is on one side, and the other side is complete QAnon, complete or conspiratorial.
Right.
The moon is cheese. Right. And then I personally, I find myself in the middle. I don't believe the mainstream media just because of mainstream media, and I don't believe someone just who says something's a conspiracy. I would think most people live there. Like something to me, if you take the whole to 2020, I believe there's a lot of things that are connected, and that specific narratives have been used to divide us as a country. And I invite everyone to check out Eric Weinstein. I really keep talking to how and I really thought it was so powerful.
Super smart guy. Yeah.
Super smart MIT guy where he talks about the disc. Check him out.
Everything, and it makes sense.
Yeah. So, and he basically says that there's two cults, and I've said it before, is that there's Magistan and there's Wokistan. I found myself in Magistan. I find myself more in the middle now because I don't like Wokistan seems to be, I hear terms like white guilt, or Black Lives Matter. I've never judged a man by the color of his skin. I don't do that. I really don't. I really do not. And I don't like being felt that I do. Now, at the same time, I also believe that worshiping a man just because he's Trump is dangerous. You don't just worship one man. So, but these two ideas, it's just shit brain thinking to me. To me, it's not our full human capacity. We need to get back into universal, how you are my brother. I don't give a shit what color skin you are. As Frank said before, I 100% agree. I thought it was a very powerful statement. The way the intention behind it. I don't give a shit what color skin you are. There's going to be bad police officers, and those people need to be held accountable. Those cops need to be held accountable. Those racist cops who use their badge and their gun, they need to be held accountable in specific situations. But that's not to take away from the cops who are good cops, who bust their ass and put themselves in line of against people who are scumbag. Doesn't matter, white, brown, whatever. And specifically, that needs. And then on the other side, and I want to go into this a little bit more because we didn't really go into the riots, but these people who are burning down a Target or whatever, they should be held accountable for what they're doing. And at the same time, there's a lot of people who were peacefully there who were saying, listen, there's a lot of shit and there's a lot of corruption and there's a lot of bad cops in our neighborhoods and they should be listened to. And that was a voice, to me, that was there's so many levels of complexity to this that I think, as you had said before, David, that there's building blocks. And I think what is a problem is the building blocks have created this left-right paradigm where there's truth in, I think, some of what Frank's saying, and there's truth in some of what you're saying, Dave. And I think there's a lot of corruption. How do you, this idea that let's say there is so much, I personally believe there's corruption. I think and it goes deeper into Hollywood. Hollywood is corrupt. Our morals are corrupt. Technology, we've always heard about technology. I'm sure we've all seen videos of people staring at their phones. We're all zombies to some extent. In entertainment culture, it's a circus where we have as long as we're comfortable in our own lives, and this lack of connection, at least I've seen in my life, breeds corruption on a judicial stance. And I think what you said earlier before, Dave, is very true, is that I can see what's going on in my view. Right now, I can see around me. I can prove what I can act on that. So what we see on screens, it's hard to decipher what is true and what is false. So anything, I guess let's shift into a little bit to the riots a little bit and that discussion. Is that a fair statement that I'm making? Is there anything you disagree or agree with, both sides? Start with you, David.
That people should be held accountable who burn the Target. I mean,
specific.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I mean, I know like there's some people that would say that that was justified. I don't subscribe to that view. I don't think it would be best if everything stayed peaceful, and it would be best if there wasn't any looting and rioting because it detracts from the overall narrative. Look, I think that there are bad police, and I think that there are good police who know who the bad police are. And I think that they need to speak up and hold those other police officers accountable instead of having a culture of like kind of having each other's back and protecting each other, even if you kind of see somebody doing the wrong thing. There's not enough accountability for bad actors in law enforcement. But
I would say go even deeper. I think there's a lack of accountability in our culture as far as of ourselves. I think we live in a very judgy culture as far as it's so easy to blame a politician, for example, right? And not to say all politicians are good or all politicians are bad, but what I'm saying is that I want to focus on what I can do. What can I do? Rather than blame people. I heard a great quote. It's small mind, and I'm sure you've heard this, Frank. Small minds talk about people. Good minds talk about events, and great minds talk about ideas. So Trump, anti-Trump, to me, I've been caught into it the past year. I'd like to focus more on like ideas. What can we do? What can we build? What can we focus on rather than, oh, they're the bad guy, they're the good guy. So the line between good and evil is within each of our hearts. So, and I think the two sides of a lot of the arguments that we're having is between judgment and forgiveness. Is that fair to say, as far as, for example, this criminals versus
Right.
people who have screwed up and they should be forgiven? And that, like, every
I just
case
think that it's such a linear argument to be made about law enforcement personnel without the acceptance of the fact that, like I said earlier, that officers in different settings have different responses to different things. And that, the guy in Fallujah acts differently than the guy in Kuwait. And if you can't start there, there's, that you have to, there's some things that you have to accept, is that even if, like, let's say for instance, like you made the argument, Dave, that cops support other cops. Well, that has a lot to do with a lot of different things. It has, because, when, first of all, an officer who does something that he's not supposed to do is subjected to all types of investigation in relation to internal affairs. They're subjected to the populace that judges immediately and doesn't have any understanding about the mindset of a cop that is put into a dangerous situation daily, every single day, has seen horrible things, raped children and dead bodies, and struggled to find the people that did it. Let me tell you something. Cops don't, in my opinion, cops don't stop crime. Cops
They
are
definitely don't.
Cops are like garbage men. They come and pick up the mess, right? And so the idea, that leads into a whole nother strain about the Second Amendment and why it's absolutely important for everybody to arm themselves, because you protect you, right? And so, what was it you said?
Cops
You
are
want a solution, right, Bacchioni? And so, I don't mean to interrupt. Go ahead, David. You had something to say.
Well, no, you were saying that about the Second Amendment and stuff. It's just like I was just saying, like the cop doesn't usually get there before the person is raped. They usually get there after and then try and solve the crime, collect evidence,
clean up the mess, pick up the dead body, pull the dead baby out of the bathwater. Yeah.
Right. And you could keep going.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. All right, so you're asking, you asked specifically, I think there was some stringing in there, Bacchioni, about solutions. And so we have to, here's what we have to admit. What you said earlier in our last conversation, Bacchioni, is about how our government does not desire revolution, they desire civil war. They desire to pit us against each other. And what we really need to, like, I'm looking at you in the camera right now, David, you don't seem like a bad guy. I mean, we've talked, we haven't had screaming matches, and, I had no intent, I wouldn't allow that to happen. But some of your ideas are just not right. You're not right. And that doesn't mean that I wouldn't help you if you needed it. Right. And so what we really need is to enact the Article 5 of the Constitution of the United States. Article 5 of the Constitution of the United States allows us to go around to Congress with a 9% approval rating because they suck. They are horrible human beings that are affected by money. And every one of them, I don't care. And even if you're not, even if you got the Dan Crenshaws or whoever you love that's in Congress and you just love them so much, fuck them. And the reason why I say that is because 87% of the voting Republicans support term limits for Congress, and 74% of voting Democrats support term limits for Congress. And the reason why that is because we all recognize, maybe if you're not on the 74%, maybe if you're the 26%, you don't realize this, but we all realize that there is an issue, that Congress is the problem, that Congress has been gerrymandering their districts. Unless you want to argue the fact that voting doesn't work on a congressional level, Congress has been gerrymandering every single election that they've had for years and years and years. And we've just been they've been walking this tightrope, keeping this two-party system alive. Because you don't want voters supporting a candidate based upon their positions. It's just about whether they're Democrat or they're Republican, or what they can do for their particular district. Look, this guy's a Republican, I'm voting for him, right? And so the solution is to enact Article 5. Our forefathers saw a day and time when it was possible for our own government to become tyrannical, and they gave us a bang bang type of way of cleaning it up, of fixing it. Revolutions don't require a shot. They just require people to say this far and no farther. They start with consensus. And so here's what we need to do. We need to enact Article 5 specifically for the reason of enacting term limits. It's the only thing we should argue to get 38 states to say that, yes, we are going to enact, because Congress is not going to do it themselves. It'd be like getting you to pull your own teeth. They are not going to enact Article 5. They are not going to have a convention of states. And so you have a state convention where you get 38 states to agree that we need term limits, and that's it. And that solves so many problems. It allows us to get rid of all these tenured, bazillion-year tenured, crusty old people that were born in the 50s that are going to probably die in the next 10 years, making decisions for us who are going to have to live with their fucking decisions, right? And so we'll be able to vote and get on two people coming together. Like then there won't be an incumbency. There'll be two fresh people coming together, and we'll be able to decide which one's best.
Dave, your view?
Why shouldn't we have that? That's what our government was meant to be.
Your view
I'm
on
in
term
favor
limits?
of term limits. Yeah, I'm in favor of term limits.
Yeah, let's do that.
See, I mean, you know, in the end, we both want a good society to be able to raise our family and live our lives. You know, it's just like you have one idea of how we get there, and you're very scared of not scared, but, you know, I don't mean to, but, you know, you are very opposed to my way of thinking that I say my way of thinking gets us to this utopia, whatever. That's a strong word, but a good society.
What is that way of thinking?
You know, look, I mean, gosh.
Are you a socialist at heart?
Well, no, I'm not a socialist. I do believe that, like, you know, there should be some government assistance for people who like have disabilities, who are born into poverty, you know, stuff like that. I'm sure you probably don't disagree with that. I think there should be, you know, social security for old people
And accountability for where our money is spent, right? So that's the thing.
Before we lose my train of thought, can I just say one thing about that, David?
Mm-hmm.
I think people really don't have a grasp on how not well off the United States is. We have the largest food lines in the history of the world. That we have people in absolute poverty, destitute poverty, living on the streets, in tents. Everyone in every democratic large metropolitan area. Because they're more accepting of the fact that, I mean, they're not just in Democrat areas, they're in Republican areas too, but people are destitute, right? And so when it comes to a financial aspect of the way of thinking, we have the largest food lines in the history of the world. No other country has so many people on food stamps, but we hide it by giving people EBT cards, right? And it's almost like a Walmart subsidy. It's like it's hidden in the fluff, because you take your EBT card down to Walmart and you buy your food with your EBT card, and Walmart gets the benefit from it, right? And because they're the cheapest food being sold. And we need to at least acknowledge that people are destitute when we start talking about plans to open up the border. That's absurd. Plans to go back into the TPP, because that's being discussed. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is the worst idea we've ever had, and plans to take away jobs in reference to global warming. Your idea that the world is heating up is in my mind absurd, and I can argue it. But
that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it's absolutely a whole nother conversation, and it's going to have to be a really long one, and I'm up for it if you want. But the point is, not millions. Lots of people lost their jobs, and when you started adding up the private prisons that were like, there's a lot. When you close down a prison, they don't even discuss it. That's a lot of jobs. That's the janitors and the cooks and the hospital personnel and the people in the infirmary and the guards and all. You know, that's a lot of people out of jobs. And so when you get rid of every single private prison in the United States, that's a lot of jobs. And when you open up the border and who was it? Go ahead.
There's truth on both sides of that, right? So, like, here's the thing: is that the institutions of private prisons, it becomes
Right.
incentivized as a result of the values of culture, which would actually tie
Well-
into what you were talking about Mockingbird Media, right? And I think that's also
No, that's
well,
that's corporatism at its height. And the reason why private prisons exist is because they get slave labor to slave or prison labor to make products that they are now allowed to stamp made in the USA on. Back in the 70s, it was against law to enter anything into the state commerce that was made by slave or prison labor. And now these corporations have fought it to the point where now they can, I mean, you got people making Starbucks coffee filters or coffee boxes that hold the cups. And at one time you had people taking airline reservations from private prisons. It's like 70% of domestic paints are made in a private prison. I see the argument. I understand that you can't have that. You can't have people profiting in corporations specifically from slave labor.
yeah.
And specifically then think about what that does to the industries in the United States when they're allowed to stamp made in the USA on it. That's disgusting. And so I agree with that. But the thing is, you don't just close them down, right?
Well, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, so
Like
what's
they
the
are,
solution?
I mean, here's the problem, right? The private prisons are lobbying for laws that are going to
Right.
put people in those prisons.
Well,
do those
not
things, right?
not the private prisons though, right? The corporations that sell their products made at private prisons are lobbying Congress. So again, it's corporatism, which is fascism. The true definition of fascism I've already shared. It is absolutely like you could throw that fucking word around all you want. The inventor of the word fascism, you could look it up right now, described it as Benito Mussolini, described that word as a merger of state and corporate power. And that was a lot easier definition than what Merriam-Webster's dictionary is. And it means about the same if you really look into it. But the fact that the Democratic Party has aligned itself with Facebook and Google in order to suppress speech, that he's aligned himself with other corporations that shut down Parler. Let me tell you that is absolutely what they did to Parler is absolute tyranny. It is absolute. Well, if you include the corporations and the government, then it's tyranny. But here's the thing: it's racketeering on its face because Twitter and Facebook lured the entire world into their platforms by promising an open exchange of ideas, and they allowed people to at least in the beginning to say whatever they liked as long as it wasn't absolute hate speech or they weren't
When you say absolute hate speech, calling for a specific danger
or violence, right? So
correct.
anything that was actually, because let me tell you what, true hate speech is governed by the United States of America. Like you are not allowed to say certain things, but you cannot have private corporations telling me what I can and can't say. And I don't care what.
Okay, let me just address this.
Yeah,
okay?
sorry. Go ahead.
All right. So, it's weird. Sometimes the First Amendment makes for strange bedfellows. And, the ACLU has oftentimes advocated for the right of the Ku Klux Klan to organize and march. And they have attacked Facebook and Twitter for removing Donald Trump from that. The opposing side of it is, I'm Mark Zuckerberg. I own Facebook, and it's my company. And if you're saying shit that I don't want to hear, it's my company, and I have every right to tell you, hey, get lost, pal. Now, the way you look at it is more that like Facebook and Twitter are like utilities, right? So like there's some restrictions on like what an electric company can do and stuff like that. Well, look, if it's a private, I don't advocate for the silencing of people. Like I'm kind of with you. In other words, like it does make for strange bedfellows. Like, but
it's more than that. Can I just interject? I'm sorry.
Well,
Because
I mean,
let David talk here.
It's a
no
private.
interruptions.
Facebook
I'll just
and
write down what I
Twitter
have to say.
Yeah. I mean, look, Facebook and Twitter are private companies, and they have the right to say who, it's their company, and they're allowed to kick people off that they want off, and they're allowed to let people stay who they want to stay because that's it's their. They built it, they own it, and they have that right. Unless you want to say that Facebook is analogous to like a utility, where, it should be, it's like a quasi-governmental agency, in other words, and like, you don't have to respect the freedom of speech in your private business. Okay. I can't,
Yes, you
if
do.
you, no, you don't.
Yes, you do.
Would it?
If
Yes, you
I
do.
can kick, if I own a restaurant and somebody's in there, I can kick them out for any reason I want,
Right. Can you
especially
kick
if
them
they're
out because they're
saying
black?
no, because
Why?
that would be, because that violates the
It's civil rights.
civil rights law. Yeah.
Well, wait, let me ask you this. Is the First Amendment part of the civil rights law?
No.
You have a civil right to be able to speak your mind as long as you don't scream.
No, you're asking me about the Civil Rights Act, right?
Right.
There's protected classes.
Okay,
Okay.
so listen.
So like basically a protected class is
I didn't ask you
somebody
about the Civil Rights Act. I asked you about, is the First Amendment a civil right?
Well, I'm telling you that because of the Civil Rights Act, you're not allowed to discriminate against people based on their race, right?
Hmm.
That's why you can't do it. You
Oh.
also can't discriminate against people who have disabilities, right? Like they're a protected class of people. Okay. So that's why you can't do that. But
Okay,
you
so
don't
here's my
have
counter-
that level of protection if you
That's not
are. How is that not true?
I'll
Like
explain.
there's no law that says that you can
There
sue
is.
somebody in for kicking you out of a
Well,
private
before
It is
you
a
interject,
crime.
Frank, let me
Yes.
ask you just to counter that. So the guy who didn't want to make the cake for I believe it was the gay couple, he didn't want to. Do you
Mhm.
remember that story?
Yeah.
Is that not
He didn't
his
want-
right, or where does that fall into it?
Are you asking
Dave?
me?
No, I'm asking Dave.
Oh, well, I believe that recent interpretation of the Constitution includes sexual orientation as a protected class, but I'm not 100% sure of that. But, I think that the courts ruled that the guy had the right to refuse to make the cake, right? So,
Okay.
So now I'm going to need to explain just a little bit about. First, I'll argue your point, and then I need to explain why they absolutely cannot do what they're doing.
Real quick, when do we want to end this? Because I want to make sure that we're on the same page here. If
I have no
you-
desire to leave unless you guys do.
Well, Dave too. It's up. I want to
I
make
got
sure.
I got no schedule. So
Okay.
I'm fine.
All right. Cool.
Wait. Oh yeah, I don't have to leave until about. I got 3 hours, so that's plenty of time. Anyhow, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
So what about you, Bacchioni? Do you need to leave?
No, I mean, I do. I want to keep it open. I don't want to keep it too long. I think we're closing in about 2 hours here. So I'm thinking
we'll lose
another
people.
half hour or so.
Okay, so let me say this. First of all, Facebook and Twitter and Apple are not private companies. They are public companies. They are
Not in the way they're not governments, though.
Okay, hold on. I know
it's not.
I know your
understand
argument.
that
I know your argument. So listen to me.
Okay.
The argument for they are not government is a falsehood. It is a fallacy. Because here's the thing. We, the people, are the government of the United States of America. I am not allowed to say certain things, and you are not allowed to say certain things. And Facebook and Twitter are bound, but as much by the First Amendment as we are. And to say otherwise is to say that corporations aren't people, or that Mark Zuckerberg has a different view of the world than what you and I would be bound for. So I can't stop you from saying something, and you can't stop me from saying it beyond the scope of the law. And neither can Facebook and Twitter, even if they got lots of money that they can spend on attorneys to put you in fucking court forever and make you spend lots and lots of money. It does not matter. Corporations cannot do that. And here's the thing. What was my other point? 1 second. It is okay. What Facebook and Twitter and Apple did was participate in a prima facie evidence of racketeering. These companies denied Parler, another competitive company, from performing the same fucking thing that they did when they were budding social networks. So if Facebook and Twitter lured billions of people across the globe into their platforms with the promise that you had an open, free exchange of ideas. And only then did they bring down the hammer and tell you, you can't say this and you can't say that. And how dare you say that the election was stolen? Or you're off. We're going to pull all your you cannot do that. It is racketeering on its face, and they need to be prosecuted. Every one of those fucking senior executives should be brought down for racketeering. It is a specific intent, and I'll tell you why. It's a specific intent to stop a budding company because they promised the same thing that they promised, only they had every intent to follow through on their promise. Parler had every intent to make it so you didn't get spied on, so that you as long as you weren't saying things that are going to hurt people or saying things that are racist and that are in violation of the law. Parler said, we're going to allow the United States government to decide whether what you say is wrong or right. And if you say something wrong, you're subject to what they say. But in other words, they decided not to make themselves an extrajudicial body. They decided not to say, oh, I have a fact checker who determined that's not true. Because it's none of your fucking business. Right? And so if you have an open exchange of ideas, that is what it is. And here's the thing. That's what Twitter and Facebook were both promised in the beginning. And therefore it is absolute racketeering, and they must be put in jail. But they won't be, because they're involved in what I said earlier, fascism with the United States government. They're in not cahoots, they're in junction. They're interconnected now, interwoven with the desires of the Democratic Party. And it's disgusting that anybody could see that and not say, God, you know, how dare they do something like that? How dare they participate in that? And Amazon too. They all participated in a racketeering scheme all together. There's no way they didn't plan or collude in reference to exactly how they were going to bring down Parler. So there needs to be an investigation into who spoke with who decided to do what, and what senior executives at what companies were making these decisions, because that's a fucking crime. And how can we just sit back and not do something about it? Are we just going to allow these large companies to do whatever they want? All right.
Yeah, I think Dave, you would agree. So if somebody believes the election was rigged, so to your point before, right?
How about if I believe that you shouldn't wear a mask?
Correct. I think you should have your right to explain, to have your viewpoint, to express that, right? Like, I'm someone who doesn't believe in that. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm the all end all. I'm not a doctor. I have followed doctors who have said one thing, and I see other doctors say another thing. That I think the agreement point would be to allow people to share how they see the world, right. Short from saying, you're going to have idiots on one side, right? Go cough in people's faces. I remember seeing people,
that's a crime.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's idiots. There's going to be idiots who take that one way or the other. But, even the masks, mask, anti-mask, another tool to divide the whole country. Just another tool. Whenever it's this left and right thinking, I think shit brain thinking. I think, okay, there's doctors who are going to say one thing on one side. I see there's political scientists and there's scientists. A real scientist is in the same way that there's let's focus on in the same way that there's teachers, and then there's a real teacher gets you to think for yourself. A real teacher will versus the false teacher who says 2 + 2 = 4. 2 + 2 = 4 versus the real teacher says this is why 2 + 2 = 4. This is how 2 + 2 = 4, and breaks it down so that you understand it.
What to think.
So, right. For example, when I see Dr. Fauci come up, I'm not against Dr. Fauci. He's one voice. He has a view. Okay. But what I mean, when I say I'm not against Dr. Fauci, what I mean is I'm not against one person. It's not one person, but the idea that we're going to listen to one person in the same way that I'm not going to listen to everything Trump says. Trump is not a dictator. It's not follow Fauci, follow Trump. That to me is shitbrain thinking. Listen to Trump, listen to Fauci, make your own decisions in life. Listen to other doctors. What do other doctors have to say? So I think it's a dangerous road to stifle speech. I think you're in agreement with that, Dave. I think, because otherwise we end up in Minority Report. Well, you said this and it might mean this, and then, you could affect a whole bunch of other people. And I think it's a very dangerous path. And to your point, Frank, the fact checkers, who fact checks the fact checkers? I mean, the idea to me is kind of ridiculous. I get, on one hand, it's like, well, if the fact checkers are integrous, sure, fact checking is a great idea. But who gets to decide which fact checkers are integrous and which aren't? So, which I think is a deeper issue, but I'm kind of going off here. Dave, is there anything you wanted to share? Just, you have the floor here. 5-10 minutes. I mean,
It's all right. I guess maybe I'm just getting a little bit fatigued and
yeah, same here.
Yeah, I started out that way, buddy.
Final points. Let's bring this together. I wanted to.
I mean, look, look. I think the nice thing is that we can talk, and we clearly don't really we don't agree on much. But like you said, if you needed help, I would help you, and if I needed help, you would help me. So that's like the best thing we have going for us. There's a lot of stuff, like, look, I'm not a huge fan of Joe Biden. I think that he's an establishment guy. To me, he's basically, I don't really see a big difference between him and like George W. Bush. Like they're kind of cut from the same cloth, long time, government guys that are just part of that old boys club. We're like, as much as the stuff that you're saying about like the George Floyd and the Jacob Blake particular situations, like I still believe that if you saw a police officer brutalizing somebody because like taking action that was racist,
right,
to harm a minority,
right,
I think that you would speak out against that.
right.
I know that you don't support that.
I don't support what they did. Here's the thing about specifically about George Floyd. That was abhorrent. How you're actually on someone's back and they're saying they can't breathe, and you don't take exceptional measures to ensure that this fucking guy is breathing. That is your responsibility. As soon as someone says they can't breathe, that is a life-threatening situation. And so, and those cops know about, positional hypoxia and all kinds of shit. There's no reason except for the fact that he felt in any way threatened by the people that were challenging him on the side of the street. That would have been alleviated by just flipping the guy over, and even given chest compressions if necessary. There is absolutely no reason that guy, the bare minimum, the very fucking bottom of the barrel, should have checked that guy's pulse at length. But he was pulseless. But but you just can't deny the fact that George Floyd had a fentanyl tab in his tongue. And the reason why he would lay down on the ground is he was asked to lay down on the ground, or he asked, "Can I lay down?" And they put him down on the ground. Now, will it be murder? No. And here's the thing: that Minnesota prosecutor is an Antifa member, or he has the
Keith Ellison. I know.
Keith Ellison's holding the Antifa book, right?
I know all about it.
So he's the one guy on the planet Earth that has the power to make those things happen again, right? And because when he tries these officers for murder, and they're found not guilty, that has a chance to ignite everything all over again.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm actually glad that Keith Ellison is running that prosecution, because I personally feel comfortable with him doing it. But
wow.
So, but look, this is, again, like those building blocks. Like I like Keith Ellison because Bernie Sanders supported him for chair of the DNC.
Well,
And
that has nothing to do with who he is.
well, I am a Bernie Sanders supporter. So if somebody's handpicked by
Socialist.
Bernie Sanders, they have a they have my support.
So, in a roundabout way, we just now say that you support socialism, yes?
I guess I don't really know what like you mean by socialism. It's a word that gets thrown around a lot.
Well, I
I
can
mean,
articulate it very easily if you like.
okay, sure, go ahead.
Okay, so I understand what they're trying to profess. They're trying to profess that we already have public roads and public utilities, and we already have things that have been identified by some people mistakenly as socialistic. Those things are not socialistic; they are necessities, and the issue being that a capitalistic society requires its citizens to have capital, and so what they're trying to do is instill some type of idea about socialism where the government really does control the means of production by influencing who gets the money and what. And so I think people don't think about the other side of the argument in relation to capitalism, because when you have people like, you know, um, well, when you have the maker, who was the guy that died for Apple? Steve Jobs. So you have a Steve Jobs that makes all this money, right? He dies with the billions of dollars in the bank. People think about, oh my God, he died with all his money, and what about the people that don't have any money? Well, you don't think about the other side of the argument. Like, he put a fucking phone in everybody's hand. If you ask everybody in the room, who here has $1 million in the bank? Nobody's gonna raise their hand. Maybe one or two people. If you ask everybody in that same room, who has an iPhone or who has a smartphone in their hand, every single person is going to hold up their hand. And so it's the other side. It's like the goods and services. People are rewarded in a capitalistic society for creating something great. And it's to give that power to government, say in relation to ethanol for corn, and decide that, okay, this is the price that you're going to sell your corn for, and this is the price you're going to buy it for, and allow this transaction. That means they decide who gets the money, and because in a capitalistic transaction, in capitalism, you have an agreed upon transaction. I like your fucking phone, and I'm willing to give you $400 for it, or whatever.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So look, I don't know that I've ever heard Bernie Sanders say that government should run all.
Frank, real quick, give him 5 minutes to talk
Okay, I
here.
won't say
No,
anything.
zero. I just want free flow of information here, both sides.
I mean, look, the stuff that Bernie Sanders says that I support are like getting money out of politics, universal health care. Well, look, I understand the concern about it because you don't want the government running healthcare. Healthcare is a dicey topic to me because it's like if it's in the for-profit realm, then you have corporations that are making decisions motivated by profit and not, protecting people's lives. If it's in the government, then, there's just as much room for corruption, right? Where, you're going to have the government making those decisions.
Yeah, different types of centralization.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know what the answer is, but it would be nice if, like, for me, I have some serious health problems and, I'm fortunate that I have a job that gives me good health insurance, but at the same time, I'm completely tied to that job. And, if I wanted to try to do something else, I would be sacrificing my health care. And, the fact that the majority of, the first world countries or whatever you want to call them have some level of socialized medicine. It seems like that might be a better system. I mean, right now, like, I'll just give you an example. Okay. I have liver problems. For many years, I would get an MRI of my liver done every 6 months. Now, all of a sudden, my health insurance says that instead of doing an MRI, which is a more expensive procedure, I'm only eligible to get a ultrasound, which is a less complete imaging. The doctors aren't able to get as complete a picture of what's going on. The only way that they will cover an MRI is if something shows up abnormal in the ultrasound. So, you know, do I like that decision?
That would be like that on a federal level.
It could be. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that that is based on how much an MRI costs and the fact that the insurance company doesn't want to pay for an MRI. They want to pay for something cheaper. So do I like the fact that they have shareholders that they're accountable towards and that they have to, you know, make their insurance company profitable? I mean, I know there's probably some laws that says that, you know, insurance companies have to act with a certain interest towards the patient, but, you know, and then how do you enforce that? You know, if insurance companies are acting in a corrupt manner, well, the mechanism is that they could be liable for a class action lawsuit and have to pay out like treble damages and all this stuff to these big law firms. Is that really the best system? I don't know, you know, but you know, there's nothing Bernie Sanders has ever said to me that's like he just wants the government to run everything. You know, he wants it, to me, he's out of most politicians like out for the little guy. And that's, you know, that's kind of what I like about him. But you know, I think he gets branded as a communist when he's like you know, he uses the phrase democratic socialist, whatever it is. I don't think he's trying to turn this country into Russia. But, you know, others may disagree.
I also do think that, you know, the truth is that there's people with good intentions. The road to hell is led by good intentions. So I do believe that there are people who have good intentions, but they don't see the complexity of the problem. And I also believe the opposite is true, that there's just liars. Personally, I mean, I actually I used to be more of a fan of Bernie Sanders. But as of late, I think that he has, I don't know at the end of the day, right? I can only know my own intentions, my own purity. My own view is I think he has a good heart. I just don't, I think it's so complex to just say that the idea on paper sounds good, you know, in the same way that we can go into another talk, you know, because I do kind of want to end this up pretty soon. Okay. But the idea of like global warming, because I bought into that. I bought into that from Netflix documentaries. I bought into it from, I don't want to hurt my earth. I don't want to. Why would I want to hurt the earth if we can get off fossil fuels? And then I start to understand, okay, this is a lot more complex than just like, this is the global warming bad, we must fix problem. Like it's complex, and there's a lot of, we have to listen to so many more ideas rather than it just good bad, because it's hard for many people to articulate a complex problem that they don't even understand. If you ask most people, explain global warming, they might just tell you, okay, CO2 high, but they don't really understand the science. I have to take care of my dog now. I'm number 3. But yeah, Frank, if you just want to respond to that, and then after, I'd like to go in. Yeah. I'd like to finish on the note of why we are all brothers and what we can do. You know, to.
So let me say this. I liked Bernie Sanders in the beginning. He seemed, you know, genuine, like he really wanted to do certain things, and I'm absolutely, I understand that. You know, you can't have either extreme. You can't have communism and you can't have total capitalism. And that the best thing for society is somewhere in the middle. But socialism is way, way over on the other side, but as near to communist as it can possibly be, because communism is an idea and socialism is the practice. And so about healthcare specifically, there's absolutely no way to identify that a government-run healthcare would be any more beneficial than the current healthcare that you have, David, or that the healthcare in, say, the United Nations is any better or worse than the one you have now. There's all type of anecdotal evidence that says that it probably wouldn't be as good as the insurance that you have now. And that's state-run healthcare. They're gonna. It's about cost effectiveness. But what you really have to buy, the biggest bite of the apple comes when you start considering how many people you're going to put out of work. If you immediately instill a public option. And if you think 1,800 people losing their jobs for the pipeline is bad, wait till millions of people or 1.5 million people lose their jobs in healthcare. And, I mean, and the argument then is going to be, well, some of those people will be picked up by the government itself. But let's just say that the government gets 3/4 of them, right? That's still a lot of people.
Yeah, it's tough when you have a job that is based on a bad idea. You know,
well, but
like,
here's the thing.
uh,
You
well,
haven't said anything yet that identifies that it's a bad idea. You have,
okay.
especially in your own case where you give out the fact that you have a decent level of health care that now requires you to have an MRI. And my argument is the exact same thing would be true on a government level, probably maybe even less. You would receive maybe once a year MRI, or not an MRI, but ultrasound. And so socialistic medicine is an idea. It doesn't mean it's going to work. And to tear down the pillars of capitalism in order to go for an idea, as has been done every single time, if the Marxist theory of how the world should run has destroyed nation after nation after nation. And we think, oh, they just didn't do it right. But that's not true.
Yeah,
They're doing the same way we're doing it.
Jordan Peterson talks about this, right? Because I think what we're at right now is we're at a precipice of like we need a new system, and I think that socialism is not the way, and I think that capitalism has its flaws too. And what he talks about is the Pareto distribution, right? That naturally, how do you fix that problem, right? That what is it, 20%?
Well, I know how to do it.
Oh boy, you have the floor.
All right, so. Here's the thing. So when I honestly believe that we are existing in a information war now that will possibly turn into a feudalism type society for people who were once free. And so what you had is a few years ago, you had a report come out that related that 91% of the populace is now in possession of more wealth than the bottom 99% of the world. And the only thing that for any thinking person to consider at that point is, I wonder if we took a vote, what we should do about that, how that would work out for those people in 1% and all of their families. Because it is abhorrent to believe that these people live such a life of luxury while the rest of us suffer. And it really is coming down to a point where it's the rich versus the poor. It is the corporate powers, because what I said all along is that we need to take they need to reinstill the corporate charter. One of the worst things the United States government ever did was that they allowed the corporate charter to go to the wayside. And at the time they did, they were taking down like 2,000 charters a year. If you traded with the enemy, if you committed crimes against the United States, if you moved all your factories to an impoverished nation in Argentina in order to save money making your goddamn shoes, they pulled your corporate charter. And they said, you're no longer allowed to do business in the United States. And you know who did that? The government. Now here's me. You're talking about Frank Stevens, right? I want government so small that you could drown it in the bathtub, right? I want a tiny little government. They should not have this massive behemoth that it is now. We should minimalize government. But one of the powers within that minimalized government should be to remove corporate charters. Give the power back to the government, even though they're still going to be being paid by these corporations. They still, the illegal per se, like when someone trades with Mexico or a drug cartel in Mexico, or when Nike moves all of their shoe factories. Nike does not have one shoe factory in the United States of America, not one. And they filter all of their product through a corporation in Panama to avoid corporate tax. And so they make their shoes by paying their employees 25 to 50 cents an hour. They make their $100 shoes. They gather them all together. They send them to Panama, where a shell Nike corporation purchases those shoes at near what they intend to sell for in the United States. And then they move all the product to a free trade zone in the United States and let it sit there. Now it's down to 2 weeks. They let that product sit there for 2 weeks and they're allowed to sell it to the same fucking people in the United States that they fired in the first place. And that is an absolute race to the bottom. You want to see wages fall in the United States? You keep doing that. Make that your business model. And let me tell you what, it is the business model. All kinds of corporations are moving all of their factories out of the United States. So what do? Re-implement the corporate charter and start pulling some fucking charters. And we also, at the same time, bring on term limits for Congress.
Okay, let me just say something. Like that attack on corporations avoiding paying their fair share of taxes is like a major argument that Bernie Sanders has been railing on.
But he never says it like that. He never mentions.
He always says the 1% needs to pay their fair share of taxes. He says that like over and over and over again. He talks about how Amazon paid zero in taxes, and you know, they made, you know, billions of dollars. So, I mean,
but how is it that all the corporations support the Democratic Party now with billions of dollars?
I think they take advantage of a complex problem, right? Because you have, I think here's the problem is that
hold on. Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, these guys are backed by big corporate money too. I mean, they're establishment people. So I guess I would, and Twitter. I mean, look, and you know, I don't think Bernie Sanders is backed by big corporations. I think Joe Biden is.
The president.
Huh?
Bernie
yeah,
Sanders,
I know. Okay, but you were basically like asking me before, like why I supported Bernie Sanders and if I'm a communist and stuff, and you know the stuff that you're, well, whatever. The stuff that you are just like the big point that you just made, that big thing about Nike. I feel like Bernie Sanders would agree with you 1,000% that that's unjust. So you know, I just wanted to.
Yes.
Huh?
Yeah, I think he does. I think
so we found a neutral ground. That's awesome. I want neutral ground. I want to be able to say one, because the two big points are my big points in this whole conversation. And it's been a great conversation, Mr. Smiley. I've had a good conversation. But here's the thing. My two biggest points in this whole thing is we need term limits and we need to implement the corporate charter. Those two things will change the United States for the better. It absolutely needs to be done, and we both agree that it should be done. So I think we're both suspicious of mainstream media. We're both suspicious of big government. We're, you know, like, it's just that, you know, there's a lot of other things that we differ on, but.
Well, we have these conversations. So, I mean, I love that we didn't, you know, that we can have these and not like kill each other like that I see so much on Facebook and Instagram. And it's funny. It's you know, I truly appreciate both of you guys coming on because I know you guys would be disagreeing and I wasn't looking up to come on here and have a happy-go-lucky conversation, but I appreciate both of you respecting each other. And I'm learning from both of you because I think by having these conversations, as I think David said perfectly, it's like we have different building blocks in how we come to see the world. And when you say, for example, when you say it's so obvious, I look at my own self and say, I've said that so much. And I go, no, it's not so damn obvious. It's not so obvious that my dad sees the world differently than the way I do. And it's not so obvious that we all see the world differently, but it's our responsibility to find the universal truth in that. What is the universal truth? Is that it's the very thin line of, you know, and not getting in left or right. You know, the idea of democracy is that the majority does rule, but the majority can become the mob. That needs to be understood, right? If the majority believes something, it doesn't necessarily make it right.
That's why this.
Let me finish.
Sorry.
But the right side too. I also believe in there's truth and bullshit on the right side. The right side saying that, you know, what's the idea? The idea is that there's conservative values, or let's say, for example, let's take the example of poor and rich, right? There's poor people who are sitting on their ass and they can be doing more things with their life. And there's also poor people who need help. So, and then the same can be said on the other side. There's people who are rich, who have a lot of money, who really, they support a lot of employees and they're good entrepreneurs out there. And then there's rich motherfuckers who really don't give a shit and they're only doing what they're doing for the money.
For the fifth jet. Yeah.
Sure. So, you know, the prince and the pauper, that needs to be our unifying thing. This idea of good versus bad has gotten us into this problem for centuries. To say someone is rich, they're a bad person, to me is BS. To say that there are people who are rich who are greed, like
how rich?
That's exactly where exactly is the line, right? So, for example,
There's a minimum wage, is there a
Bernie
maximum?
Sanders better draw the line exactly where it is. He has a bunch of houses, right? So, should he give up his houses? No, I don't think he should give up certain his houses. So,
He's a public servant. He should give up both his houses.
my point is, what I'm saying is that if you're going to be a person with the pen in your hand, drawing a line saying, "Oh, rich is bad," you better be exactly clear where that line is. So, anyway, I wanted to end on this note, and I wrote it down here. I have you're gonna laugh. I have two things on my list here. So this is gonna be. I wanted to talk about Black Lives Matter, and we went into a little bit of that
Next time.
But we went into the riots and the Capitol Hill, and I'm glad we did because I know it's a very hot, controversial topic. But the last thing I wanted to end on was, and I want to give you each a few minutes to talk uninterrupted. Purpose of life. What does that mean to you? What is the purpose of life? And it could be what it is to you individually, but also on a universal scale. And I'll start with you, Frank, and then Dave, you'll have the final word. The purpose of
Well,
life to you.
it really is about posterity. I've said that before. And, it is my main focus of everything and should be the main focus of everything for everyone. If you don't believe in posterity, you probably shouldn't exist. Um, you're not going to exist because you're only going to be here so long, and what we leave behind is what's important. And so we exist under a framework of ideas, and we decide, like every country, every border, all language, it's all ideas of people and what we choose to pass on to the people that we that the reason why we pass these ideas on to you, because this is what better serves you as a human being. Anything else is all bullshit. We've allowed this pervasive attitude that especially by the rich, who think I'm going to get whatever the fuck I want and do whatever I want and screw the world. And it's really evident in the Democratic Party, and it has a lot to do with corporatism. And the thing about it is, we are not a democracy, and we shouldn't long to be a democracy.
Purpose of life. I want to stick on purpose of life.
We're a republic, right? And it's important. The purpose of life is to have to formulate your ideas for the betterment of all. And so, if you can structure your ideas under a republic, that where the rights of the individual are more important than anything, that democracy is 51% tyranny. If you're a smooth fucking talker, you're going to get whatever you want in a democracy, right? Because you're going to be able to convince people to see things your way. And all you got to do is get that 51%, and that house across the street is yours, because this is democracy. But not in a republic. We must forever remain a republic where the rights of the individual are paramount. And so there are huge things that are important to me. My children are important to me. I love my family. I love my friends. I keep them close to me. I mean, I'm about to go do something in here in another couple hours to help somebody else out. But it's not really helping them out. It's just giving them an award. But and I hope you don't post this before that either, because I think she might listen. Well, this is a fucking 2-hour program. She's not going to be able to listen to.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so,
I'll wait a little bit anyway.
Yeah, it's okay. You can post it whenever. Anyhow, yeah, and so I believe that it is best for everyone if we do just a couple of those things. The most important things about a conversation is the things that we agree with. We have not agreed on many things, and for all kinds of reasons, like you said, David, is that there's all time we all have this different background, and we have these different ideas and different building blocks of who we are as a human being. I think there's a great importance for violence, and you may not. And but if we can just work on those two things, if we can implement the corporate charter and implement term limits for Congress, we can really shape this freaking country the way it should be. And mainly implement term limits. Everybody wants it except for Congress. That's my 2 cents.
Dave, purpose of life to you, and anything you want to add in closing.
All right.
I know it's a
two
heavy ass
things.
question too.
Well, yeah. I mean, look. There was a time in my life. I told you I had some liver problems, right? I was hospitalized for a month, and I was like on the liver transplant list, and I was really sick, man. Um, and at that time period, I actually feel like my mental state was almost like a blessing, because when you're faced with that type of situation, and I know you said that you had a very serious accident, or I know you didn't go into the details, but maybe you experienced something similar to this, where a lot of the distractions of life become irrelevant. Like the stuff we get caught up with, that you really can see what's important and what's not. And what I determined was important was the friendships, the relationships I had with other human beings. That's what was important to me. I didn't care how many, one night stands I had, or, how many hot chicks I banged, or, how much, you know, that I went to this concert, or, you know, did this, like all the stuff that people brag about and stuff. Like, it just wasn't important to me. What
Human
was
connection.
important was being a good person, being friendly. At that time period in my life, I just made it a point to greet everybody with a smile, and have good energy, and like, that's what was important, being kind, um, and forming important relationships. And the other thing I'll say in regards to our purpose, or whatever the question was. So there's a famous, or not famous, but there was a sermon that the rabbi at my synagogue gave one time, and it's something that really stuck with me. And it was basically, the rabbi said, if you live your life, and you stand, you're at the pearly gates, or whatever, and God says to you, you have no bruises on your body. Was there nothing down there worth fighting for? So, to me, life is about getting bruises too, and fighting for what's right. So it's about relationships, putting good energy out into the universe, and fighting to make the world a better place.
I agree.
Well
Well,
said.
and so what we said last time, Becky, in our last thing, is that when great forces are on the move in the world, you discover that you're a spirit, you're not an animal, right? And that from my personal experience, that's all that you are. You don't have a soul, you are a soul, right? And so you have a body, and we just had it wrong all this time.
Yeah, and I'd like to finish on the note and saying that words are tools, and when we start using them as such, we get more context. And I think by having these difficult conversations, we get into deeper context. I posted I saw a thing that said, make our ideas have sex so we can impregnate better ideas. And I thought that was cool, because it's like, what makes a good partner is someone who challenges you, right? And you don't want someone who just agrees with everything you're saying, right? So in the same way, I think that we also need that we need more people in the battlefield of fighting ideas and articulating ideas. And I think it's so easy to get caught on uh, these utopia ideas that sound good on paper, but when you really dive into them, it's so much more complex. Um, and it's necessary to kind of, as I've learned by making these videos, how much of an idiot I am. And when I articulate my ignorance and be open with that, as I've said in a first video, Genesis and Genesis and exposure, to your point, Frank, of posterity. You can't bring in somebody into this world if you don't know your own purpose. If you do, they're just going to follow your own ignorance. And the other thing that I've noticed is exposure. When I expose my own BS, I can see it better in others. And I think to some extent we're all full of shit. And as I get rid of my own shit, I can see clearer. And anyway, I'm a little ranting now. It's been a long talk, almost 3 hours.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No,
I've
I-
enjoyed the conversation. I'll say
I-
that much. And I'm tired. I am really tired.
I'm tired too. I think we all are.
Let me tell you this. I'm usually a lot more salty when I'm just tired. I mean, a lot more. So thank God it didn't try to work out that way.
Yeah. And I invite both of you guys to watch this video, and I'm going to watch this video too. And we're going to see, like, what did I say was wrong? Who was talking too much? Who was talking too little? And to really, to learn from this conversation. Hopefully other people can see it the same way. We're
Did I
all
talk
brothers
too
here. What's that?
Did I talk too much?
I think you were, but I think that you're passionate, and your idea is that your idea and core is in the right place. And I think the
Let me
same
just say
thing
this.
for David.
Everything I said was right.
It's cute. Oh man. So I'm gonna end it there. And I'll keep you guys on just to wrap up. But thanks everybody for tuning
Well, I
in.
have nothing else to say. You guys I enjoyed the conversation. Like I said, I'm real tired, and I'll probably go down and take a nap before I go do my little thing.
All right. Well, yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to come on here, man, and thanks for having me. And it was a good conversation. If anything, it humanizes the other side, right? Like, we get so caught up in our own echo chambers of how could somebody possibly think that? Like, I'm like,
Yes.
how could anybody support Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Like, how could anybody believe that? And you're probably like, how could
Yeah.
anybody support this? And it's like, here we are having a conversation with a person that actually holds those beliefs that we can't fathom that somebody has when we're in our own space. But now having a conversation with somebody who does hold those beliefs, it humanizes the other side. And, I think that's an accomplishment. So, anyway.
And I'm excited for future conversations as well. And
yeah, I'm
if
definitely
you want to have other people,
two.
join, we can have 5, 6, 7 people,
It's gonna be a long conversation, dude.
Sure, man. But and moving forward, that could be another thing too. If we want to keep shorter conversations, wow, what can we do? And I'll learn, how I can, add balance.
I definitely have somebody that I would like to get on this.
Absolutely. And hopefully I inspire you guys to also get in the arena too. And not to say that, for me right now, I was doing Uber, and, I to me, it was soul killing. And I still do it a little bit on the side, but I want this to be my passion. But, and I know you you both have jobs that you're working. So, but even just doing it a little bit on the side, starting your own thing, meet different people. It's so cool to just watch, to have all these discussions and to be there. So, and I want to inspire other people to, that we can all do that. Everybody's looking for, my first video is like, everybody's looking for somebody else to fix the problem. It's like, we fix the problem. To your point, Frank, we, the people, it starts here. It starts with you, what you do and what you do in your community, and having these conversations.
So. All right, fellas, I'm getting to the point where I have to use the bathroom again. So
yeah, what, man?
All right, thanks for the conversation, guys.
Yeah, man. Thanks. I appreciate your time, and thanks, Mike, too, for organizing.
Thank you. Absolutely.
All right.